Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our 2025 Mayor's Megawatt Challenge Forum. My name is Catherine Wilson. I'm the program manager of the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge, a program working with municipalities to reduce energy use and greenhouse gas emissions in their own facilities. We're continuing with our theme of practical pathways to net zero carbon buildings, and today we'll be exploring the opportunities, the challenges, and the responsibilities of leading climate action in municipalities. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our program sponsor, Enbridge Gas, who've been helping us and our municipalities achieve our objectives. So just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions related to the Zoom technology, please enter them into the chat. If you have questions related to content, please use the Q&A option. Depending on the nature of the questions, some will be addressed live and any others will be addressed in a question and answer document that will be circulated following the event. So before getting started, we would just like to acknowledge with respect the ancestral and unceded territory of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that share these lands with us. We're meeting on the traditional homes of many nations, including the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. This meeting is virtual, reaching people across Canada, but we are speaking from lands governed by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit River. It's our hope that the work we do today contributes meaningfully to our collective responsibility as stewards of the environment. So before diving in, I would just like to acknowledge and recognize some of our member municipalities. As you can see, we have a wide range of municipal members from large cities to small villages all across the country. Some are just beginning down the path to low carbon. Others are already well on their way and willing to share what they've learned with others. So no matter where you're at in your journey, there's a place for you in the program. So after the opening remarks from Ian Jarvis, our first panel will bring together senior leaders from local governments to explore strategic leadership that's driving meaningful local climate action. Annette and Chris will discuss opportunities and possibilities while addressing the challenges of limited resources and competing priorities. They'll discuss how they're setting climate goals, integrating climate considerations in their decision-making, and fostering collaboration across municipal departments and their community. Then, recognizing that limited funding often stands in the way of climate progress, we'll turn to a panel of leading service providers who will share how municipalities can upgrade their infrastructure, boost their energy efficiency, and integrate renewables, all without the burden of major upfront costs. I'll be introducing each of the panelists shortly, but at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Ian Jarvis, Executive Director of the Climate Challenge Network, to provide the opening remarks.
Catherine, thank you. And a reminder of Catherine's earlier comment, there's a lot of really good experience and thinkers in our audience today. We've got a very large audience. Do use the Q&A, not the chat. Do use the Q&A for your questions. That way we can respond to them during or after the session, and they become part of the proceedings. We always find the Q&A summary that we provide with the recording of this event is a really valuable part of the whole story. That's what we learn the most from. It's the difficult questions that you folks ask. So please use the Q&A, and we'll look forward to responding as we go through. Next slide, please. So want to begin by, no, go back, please.
Oh, okay.
Want to begin by going back and giving credit to the Hamilton Spectator, who back in 2021 characterized the emerging COVID crisis at that time in this exceptional way. And I speak to audiences like this across North America on a regular basis, and this is one of my favorite graphics coming out of that. So you may remember that the WHO declared COVID as being a matter of global concern back on January the 30th, 2020, almost 6 years ago now. March the 11th, they declared the pandemic, and the amazing short time frame to develop vaccines led to the pandemic coming to an end on May the 23rd, in May of 2023. So now, less than 3 years ago. So it seems like longer, because we remember this so vividly. We remember how this worked. But the concept of this cartoon was around, here's COVID. The priority was some degree of social withdrawal, washing our hands, wearing masks, and again, the remarkably quick advent of vaccines that could help us through that. And at that time, they predicted the recession. So the big COVID recession began in February of 2020. It was followed, you may recall, by the stock market crash and every advanced economy around the world putting massive funding, incurring enormous debt into keeping economies going, keeping businesses alive, keeping people alive, funding expansions to healthcare to treat the fallout of what was happening with COVID. So the recession was real. It was followed by a food crisis from 21 to 23. The world was struggling with food supplies because so much of the food supply had been cut off. The energy crisis followed that, where again energy supply was challenged as we began to emerge out of this. So it was a dark time. Again, it's remarkably not that long ago, but we remember it very clearly. We remember it vividly. What the Hamilton Spectator cartoonist anticipated here was that climate change is going to dwarf the effects that we saw through COVID. So I know with the municipal market, a really important constituency for us, we see it as a leader in terms of climate action, climate response. You're very familiar with this, but it's helpful to remind ourselves of where we've come from and what's coming with respect to climate change. So next slide, please. So it's easy to go online and take a look at the reports that are there. We know that for COVID-19, there were 7.1 million deaths in total over that period. Horrific number. This is worldwide. The economic damage depends on how you try to frame it. It was somewhere between 17 and $35 trillion over a 5-year period. Moving forward to climate change right now, the forecasts are that twice that number of deaths will occur by 2050. The majority through respiratory diseases and heat stroke and extreme heat. The number of first responders and people who perish in floods and fires and monsoons and typhoons, they're a relatively small part of that number, but still it's a horrifying situation there. The economic impact is estimated to be around $12.5 trillion by 2050. Similar order of magnitude to COVID, but a smaller number. So we're seeing climate change as being something of a slow burn. There's less urgency that's arisen. There's less almost panic that was there around COVID. But it's going to be more damaging in the long term. And the critical thing for climate change, which you all appreciate, is there is no vaccine. We're not going to come up with Pfizer and Moderna having competing vaccines that are going to bring this to an end. There is no cure. There's no end in sight to climate change. We talk about 2050 as an end point, but it's not an end point. It's just a continuation. Climate change is here to stay. The long-term damage will be more devastating than COVID-19 was. Next slide, please. So the message that we try to do, these are the 3 words that we use with every presentation that we give as Climate Challenge Network these days. Urgency, we truly are running out of time. Opportunity for leadership. Opportunity in the business community to develop solutions to climate change that can lead to great commercial success, but opportunity to be part of the solution and a responsibility. We need to get forward. So that the 3 points that we raise here are climate change is the defining issue of our time. It is global, it's not going away, and it challenges everybody to take urgent action. And the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold, which we may already have passed, has catastrophic ramifications. And I want to come back to catastrophic. We don't do hyperbole here. We don't do high drama, but catastrophic is the key word there. The second point is we're going in the wrong direction. That emissions due to buildings are rising, not going down. Big buildings, municipal buildings, hospitals, schools, office buildings are the low-hanging fruit. These are the ones we should be able to solve, but we're going in the wrong direction. And the idea that governments can't fix this. There's significant backtracking by governments these days, as we hear all the time at the federal level, at the state level, at the provincial level, and even some of the big cities that are backtracking. It's down to us to take the lead. And again, municipalities, small and large, have been taking this lead for a number of years now. So the fire on the left is Kelowna burning. The reservoir shrinking on the right is also in British Columbia. 2030 is the target, the key year coming up for meeting emissions reductions targets. We're not on track. If we don't meet 2030, 2040 is challenging, and 2050 becomes impossible. Urgency, opportunity, responsibility. Next slide, please. So again, you are such an important constituency to us. Municipalities have been stepping up for years now with targets, and as this text says, moving from commitments and declarations of climate emergency to real concrete action. And the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge's role in all of this is to enable, encourage, network, make all of this happen, accelerate change. Next slide, please. Talking a bit, and again, I'm not going to dwell on this. We could have a day-long conversation, but this is what is beginning and what is coming. The world now is preoccupied with affordability and blames the carbon tax, but my insurance premiums, I live in a 7th-floor condominium. I got a small car. My insurance premiums have gone up by 150% in 3 years. Politicians love to blame the carbon tax for food price increases, but food price increases are primarily driven by loss of arable land. Healthcare costs are too high. The system is strained already, and it's only going to get worse. And energy prices. Who would have thought that New Jersey, a defining election issue, would be high electricity prices? We thought those were things of the past. They're just coming back. So affordability is a big deal. Extreme weather events we see, they remind us every day, but somehow we don't always notice. Smoke days. We're planning for smoke days in schools and hospitals. Water scarcity and drought, we would suggest, is going to be the defining issue that brings everything to a head here, leads to loss of livelihoods. When the fish go away and the water goes away, a large part of the world has no way of making a living, and that is going to drive mass migration. We think migration is an issue now. We haven't seen anything yet. Migration, the people in the rest of the world that are struggling through climate change, which is largely attributable to us, they are not going to stay put. So we can try to limit it at this end, but the demand is going to keep rising, and that is going to lead to concern and strife between regions and nations. And we see this already. Look at the states in the US on the Colorado River that are already fighting over the diminishing water supply coming out of the Colorado River. That's in the United States. You can imagine the picture in the rest of the world. So we don't believe catastrophic is hyperbole. We think it's what's coming. We're in trouble, and we all need to take action. Next slide, please. Energy transition is part of this. And again, we have a long conversation with this. I was in California the beginning of last year speaking to the American Boiler Manufacturers Association. Like, what does this transition look for different industries, for different populations, different countries, different communities? The transition at the end of the 19th century from wind and animal power and wood power to the miracle of hydrocarbons was a really easy transition. There were only 1.6 billion of us on the planet at that time. And it truly was a miracle how much energy you could pack into a tank of gasoline or a cubic meter of gas was miraculous. The transition weaning ourselves off hydrocarbons and towards electricity, with 8 billion people of us now on the planet, is an enormous challenge. It's almost unimaginable, but it's one that we have to begin working with right now. What's going to happen to the electric grid? It's primarily electrification is awesome. It's of a scale that we can't even imagine, but we need to get working on it right now. Next slide. So in terms of the beginning, the setting the stage for this, we're at the start of a period of transformational change where there'll be winners and losers. There'll be political winners and losers. There will be business winners and losers. Transformational change is challenging to everybody. We need to navigate this energy transition. Electrification is coming. We've got to keep going despite the ebb and flow of political will. Ultimately, it's the public that will demand what they want. And at the moment, we're going backwards in terms of political commitment. My friend, the vice president at Cortellucci Vaughan Hospital last year, asked the question, a bit coming from the Second World War, of what were you doing during the climate crisis? That was striking for everybody at our summer workshop for greening healthcare last year. What were we doing through the climate crisis? Were we actively involved? Did we play our share? And the idea of acting locally, that every municipality has a fair share of emissions reduction to contribute. And this is the time to make that resolution that we're going to get on with this starting now, starting in 2016. Next slide, please. So we're from the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge, and we're here to work. Step one is always efficiency. So there's so much potential for energy efficiency. You've all seen these ski slopes, these benchmark charts. Every horizontal line here is a municipality, is a municipal building, is one of our administration buildings, town halls, city halls, administration buildings across North America. And the ones at the bottom simply had the most to contribute. So the definitive statement that every municipality needs to know where their city hall, where their town hall is on this chart. And if they're in the bottom half, they have more to contribute. They have a bigger share to contribute within there. So knowing where you stand and moving forward is always part of Catherine's message to everybody at all of our events all the years. But we have so much room to improve. We estimate that just running the facilities we have now, running them well, we can cut emissions by 30%. We got to get on with that because it's a no-brainer. It's easy. It's not easy to do, but it's high economic returns. Next slide, please. And every member of the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge, you get a report like this every year. Catherine runs the numbers. We update our targets all the time, but this tells us for every one of your buildings, this is just a sample. It is one of our members, but every one of our buildings has its fair share, has its target. Electricity reductions, gas reductions where most of the emissions reduction potential. And you can see typically it's a handful of buildings in each municipality. It's a small proportion that have the lion's share of the opportunity. Focus on them first. Next slide, please. And as well as operational improvements, capital planning is a big deal. This is a typical from some of the analysis that my friend Sean Mitchinson, who's on this call, has put together. The cash flow charts. We need to spend money on decarbonization, but the least cost pathway to net zero is first energy efficiency, and then implementing renewable energy solutions, heat recovery solutions, the kinds of capital projects that over a period of time are going to be financially advantageous to us. This is the least cost way to get to net zero, and we have to get to net zero. There is no plan B. Next slide, please. So brings us into leadership. This year we prevailed upon two of our smaller municipal members who don't necessarily have the kind of resources that some of the bigger municipalities have, but have still got remarkable things done. So I'm happy to welcome Annette and Chris as our panelists today. We want to hear their stories, and then I want to spend some time kind of digging into again how do small how do they get things done? How have they made the remarkable progress and successes they have? What's behind that? So we have a Q&A following this. As you hear the stories from Bonnechere Valley and from the Township of King, please do put your questions into the Q&A. Catherine will be tracking those and we'll bring them in. But let's learn everything from two of who we regard as leaders and how they managed to move forward in this space and get really important things done. So, Annette, I think we're turning first to you.
We
Thank
are welcome, Annette.
Thank you very much, Catherine and Ian and everyone for having me here today. I'm Annette. I am the Chief Administrative Officer for the Township of Bonnechere Valley. I also am the plant manager for our generation corporation here. So energy is a big part of what we do. And I just want to say I really appreciate, Ian, everything that you talked about. I mean, insurance, you're right, with all the natural disasters or unnatural disasters, whatever you want to say. Continues to increase with all of that. We've had a super hot summer, at least where I am in Bonnechere Valley in Renfrew County, just west of Ottawa, if you're wondering where that is. So where our water is super low right now, we're a little concerned of drought coming if we don't get enough snow this winter, and energy. I know the province is trying to keep energy costs down, and we're certainly trying to work with them, and food. Trying to have local food. So that doesn't have to travel so far in the big trucks. And I think the only two types of food that didn't go up through COVID was bananas and shrimp. So if you're eating bananas and shrimp, you're paying the same price you were in 2019. Anything else is gone exponentially up for whatever reason. I don't know what the reasons are, but that is certainly something we know. And healthcare in Renfrew County, we've got our virtual triage, where we have a 1-800 number you call in if you don't have a doctor, or even if you do. So that helps with us not having to have an actual facility and an actual place where people can call. They can have a virtual call with a doctor. So certainly trying to do our part with all of those things. So if we can go to my first slide. Thank you. Just quick conversation about energy conservation and our management plan here that we've committed to at the Township of Bonnechere Valley. The work that we've done with Enerlife for the Eganville Arena and the Curling Club. And of course, asset management report does bring a lot of those things together, and important to have that included in your plan, I think, to make a commitment to that. So, just talking generally about our vision, is to reduce our total energy consumption and our carbon footprints. We want to make wise and efficient use of energy and our resources, but still maintain the efficiency and the effective level of our services for the public. And we also want to make sure that we are, taking care of the township's fiscal resources, trying to minimize our negative environmental impact from township operations as far as we can. And, we have targets. We don't always meet them. We did decrease consumption by 7.8 from 2013. And we're trying to continue to reduce it another 7.0, maybe 15%. How much lower can we go? 2% a year is the minimum we sort of aim for, and we do the best we can to do that. Our objectives really are to find energy efficiency. So working with, Enerlife and Simcoe and lots of other consultants to sort of see where our impacts are. And I mean, you talked about heat loss, Ian, absolutely. I don't know how to solve those problems, but I know that there's people that do, like Catherine out there, that we can call and say, what are we doing here? What are we doing wrong? What can we do better? That's going to save us money. It's going to save our carbon. It's going to reduce our carbon footprint. And those are all good things. So we did work with them to have a study done. We received some funding. Thank you very much through FCM, and we're continuing to look for more funding for these things. We didn't go forward with our curling rink project, unfortunately, which would have brought that facility to a net zero. but it's just on the back burner right now. It hasn't gone anywhere. So we've also received funding recently for installing EV chargers. We're purchasing an electric vehicle in 2025 for a public ride share. We all know transit helps as well, reduce emissions, and also, you know, accessibility to transit in the community. So we're continue to work with the Eganville Arena for our emissions reduction goals, the refrigeration plant heat recovery, as well as to reduce the heating load on the facilities, supposed to save us about 9.5 tons or 21% annually. Solar panels, 272 kilowatt array. We know that the province of Ontario looking for about a 75% increase in electricity over the next 10 years. So how are we going to do that? We're going to have to do it together. As well as that's going to offset about 22 tons or 49% annually. The air source heat pump, domestic water heater, all of these things reducing our tonnage and also, of course, our costs. And levels of service, I mean, we're really, when you come down to asset management, that's an important part. We want to make sure that everybody's safe, getting, you know, services that they want, they're satisfied. We want to look at efficiency, sustainability. I liked your responsibility and your opportunity and your urgency. That's not in there, but we might add it the next time we go through our asset management plan. Our responsiveness, environmental compliance, and all of these things as we move forward to basically, you know, environmental protection, but also customer satisfaction for the municipality. Sorry, next slide, please. So this is our initiative for our EV chargers and our electric vehicles. So we did get funding through our Rural Transit Solutions Fund to do this with, and I have 2 municipal partners in other municipalities. So there's 3 of us three EV chargers going in and 3 vehicles being purchased through a ride share. Collaborative effort was put together for these zero emission vehicles and the 6 charging stations. So hoping to enhance on-demand transportation services in our communities, because being rural, we don't have transit, but we know maybe a household with 2 vehicles is going to go down to 1 vehicle, and this will be their option whenever they need a second one. If I've got a dentist appointment, you know, and usually I can walk to work, or my husband drops me at work, I just need a second vehicle for this day. So those are the types of things that we're trying to assist. Or we have volunteer drivers through our senior center that take our seniors to medical appointments, groceries, things like that. Wouldn't it be great if they're all using this zero emissions vehicle instead of all of their vehicles, which could, you know, so those types of things that we're moving forward that with council support in our community. And I don't know if that's it for me. There's more slides. Okay, so this is our Eganville Arena, so low carbon project. You can kind of see that's our building there. It was last sort of had a fair amount of money invested into it in 2018. So we've got $1 million from the GICB grant approved. We've applied for the FCM grant. I think we're going to get approved, but I won't know till next week or the week after. And there's also a loan with that. And, you know, anticipated cost savings, you can see over 50,000 a year, reducing our energy about 74%, maybe we'll get to 80, who knows, and greenhouse gas emissions. So, you know, really, again, the heating, just like you talked about, like conserving that, humidity, ice temperature, the lighting, LED lighting, always an easy thing to do, really. I know funding, there's always competition for it, but not that difficult to put into place, and there are savings there as well. And the solar will be interesting. I've been through a couple projects with solar that didn't come to fruition yet, so I'm excited about this one as well. And we already had to do some replacements in our refrigeration plant coming up, so you know, that was really my plea to council to say, we're going to spend this money anyway. Let's spend it the best way we can and have the best impact we can in our community. So next slide is there. So here's some numbers and some charts if that's what you like. Just basically going over the project, and as you can see, it looks like for the minimum investment that we're going to get, because we've got a bunch of funding going into it, we're really going to make some good impacts. So I don't really have anything to add to that, but keys to success. So yeah, with these projects, really, you want to have a vision, some goals, get your commitment from council. And like I said, it wasn't that difficult. We were spending money anyway, and there was funding to get this plan done. And the plan pretty much set out what it is we were going to do. And anytime you're talking about savings, council's very, very excited about that. So that was very good. And, you know, facility staff, always engaging with them to see what will work or what won't work. And that's where partners with, you know, EnerLife and Simcoe really comes into consideration, and really training, like, you know, just remember to shut off lights, and remember to turn down, you know, kind of have your heat set at what should make sense. Maybe you don't need to turn the heat on right away. Maybe you don't need the air conditioning right away. Maybe you can open a window. So those are good conversations to have as well. Aging infrastructure. Yeah. I mean, every time you've got to go, we've got a few furnaces. Enbridge is coming to town. We are doing our best to, you know, moving from oil, and anything we can do to save that in our infrastructure, as we're going to replace it anyway. Let's get those things done. So making the business case, again, much easier to make when you've got, you know, Catherine on your side or other people on your side. So we appreciate that. And life cycle costing. Yes, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, the infrastructure is aging. Here's what the costs are going to be, and here's the efficiencies that we're going to find through these projects. So, and grants. There's so many grants out there, and some of them are not too difficult to fill out, but some of them require, everybody here probably knows RET screen and different data points, and that is not my that's not my area of expertise. I do enjoy numbers, financial numbers, but when you're talking about those types of things, I'm going to look to somebody else, say, okay, explain to me what this means. And at the end of the day, I want to know, how is that, you know, what do those numbers mean? Is it benefiting us from an efficiency standpoint? Is it benefiting us from a reduction of carbon? Is it benefiting us from dollars? But I mean, the overall and how you calculate all of that, not something I'm going to be doing, but I can sell it. You give me the stuff, and I will sell it. And hopefully together that will make a good impact for the community and everybody else. So yeah, that's all I think. I think that's it for me.
Yes, that was fantastic,
Okay.
Annette. Thank you very much for giving us an overview and a taste of what's happening in Bonnechere Valley. It's very exciting.
Yes.
Ian, I don't know if you have
Yeah,
any
let's
comments,
move
or we
straight
can.
to, if we could,
Yep.
to Chris in King
Yep.
City.
Yep. And then we'll get into the conversation after that.
Thank
Hello,
you.
Chris.
Thank you both. And I just want to say thank you to Annette for that presentation. It was fantastic. I thought her keys to success were right on the mark, to the point where I didn't have to add them into my slide deck. So that's fantastic. I'm Chris Bastiano. I'm the Director of Community Services for King Township. I've been here coming on about 30 years now. So I've got to go through the actual change that we've seen as a municipality, and the projects that we've been working through, from the bottom to the top, all the way through. I've been the director now for about 14 years. We can jump to the next slide if you want, and we'll talk a little bit about our journey. We just recently adopted our second conservation energy management plan, which is a fantastic tool, fantastic update to where we started from, because when we started back in 2016, we were still really learning the ropes. We were making the changes, but like everybody else, trying to play catch up in a small municipality. And you know what we've been able to do over the last couple of years, aside from our buildings, is add staff capacity, which is a huge impetus for us being able to move forward. We went from a one-person environmental stewardship team to a four-person climate, environment, and sustainability team at this point. Thanks to the backing of our community and council, and that led to our next initiative, which is our first approved community climate action plan. Because we know as a municipality, when we're talking about emissions, we're only 2% of the overall emissions of King Township. And where we'll make the real impact is what we can drive our community towards doing in their part, right? They represent the largest sector that can affect change, whether it's through their automotives or through their house change. And we will work and strive towards making the commitment of King Township to reduce carbon, not just within our own, but on that side as well. Obviously, everything has to tie into our other initiatives and our plans. Our corporate strategic plan identified climate change initiatives like the climate community plan, like planting 50,000 trees over the term of council, which was an investment above and beyond our climate change initiative fund. They put a substantial $500,000 into that initiative as well. We looked where we can incorporate our climate conservation into our OP as we go through that update. It was already in our last official plan, One King, several years ago. It's even deeper in now through just planning, but also our green development standards, which ask our developers to go above and beyond the building code to drive change in their new developments. And then, as Annette alluded to as well, the asset management plan development, which we've just got to our nonlinear assets this year, and we've implemented an additional funding opportunity through our current budget. But it's always that is the like for like. Council has been great at adjusting so that we're not just going like for like. It's what's the premium above and beyond, and how do we go better than what we are right now, which obviously comes with its challenges as well from a funding perspective, even from an infrastructure perspective. I'm sure we'll talk about that more as we get down into the moderation. But next slide, please. And we had numbers and charts in the nets as well. I won't go into this, but I just want to, we're proud of this slide because this shows that despite us increasing our infrastructure as we've moved along, as we've grown as a community, because we are a community of growth, that while we're not necessarily seeing a great reduction, we are seeing that we are able to hold our numbers across the board. We've added additional fleet. We've increased our facility footprints and sizes. We'll look at the Zancor Center on the next slide, which is triple the size of a previous arena that we had. But we're doing it without increasing our carbon footprint right now and reducing where we can. And that's done through a couple of key initiatives. It's looking at where we can change our reliance on natural gas to electric, if at all possible, in our facility sectors where we can go to passive house design, but also within our fleet. Well, we can't move to a fully electric fleet yet. Where can we make changes? Is it changing the vehicle size and compatibility? Is it going to a hybrid as a first step in our larger vehicles because the electric capacity isn't quite there yet? So we're looking at all initiatives as we move forward. Next slide, please. So some of our major accomplishments over the last little bit have been looking at electrification of our vehicles, not just for us, but for our community. We did install, I think it's 40 new EV charging stations across the municipality. Lessons learned as we've come along. We did a lot of level 2 chargers. We probably should have done more level 3 chargers because that's what's really going to drive users to our sites because they'll come and they can do it in 30 minutes while they're there instead of the several hours it takes otherwise. Our municipal center was geothermal, and that was for us a big advancement before we really got into our goal setting and targets. Council made a commitment at the time to really move us forward, and it showed great benefits. That's probably one of our biggest changes in greenhouse gas reduction is our municipal center from where we were to where we are. Smaller projects like our recommissioning of our Trizan Center and Nobleton Arena is even implementing real ice, which is using cold water to flood your facilities instead of hot water through a reverse osmosis system that allows for us to reduce our reliance on natural gas in those areas. And then the big one, if we're gonna, we might as well talk about the big one, which is our Zancor Center, which is, Canada's first carbon neutral recreation center of its size and differential of types of service offerings. And it's done through a variety of methods, whether it's all electric systems within it, low reliance on natural gas, heat recovery, CO2 refrigeration system, and future proofing for other initiatives like solar panels. The roof was constructed so that it could accommodate a large array of solar panels. We had opportunities to explore geothermal at this site as well, which we couldn't fit within the funding envelope, but we made sure that we roughed in everything we needed now. So when we do have to go back and replace it later, we're not paying for the rough in and the upgrade. We're only paying for that differential in the system cost at that time. So we're moving in the right direction and are really happy with the progress we've made so far. Next slide, please. Mine's much shorter than Annette's, and like I said, I think she covered it really well. But our keys to success have been a great council buy-in, whether it's the declaration of a climate emergency or putting money where they say that it's important is the big thing. The upgrades to our municipal center were above and beyond what we had funded originally. And council went back to the bank and they said, okay, let's find a way. The municipal center was a smaller premium, but the Zangor Center was an additional $8 million to go from, standard equipment to where we are now. I apologize. There's one of our energy saving features. My lights just went off in my office because I haven't moved enough. But integration into our other plans, as I talked about, we do have a very strong advocacy group with our senior leadership team. Everybody sees this as a good initiative. We're starting to move forward with that second energy management plan to incorporating into our construction technologies as well. Should we be looking at recycled materials or low carbon concrete as an example in our roads projects and our sidewalk projects? And we do have an annual allocated dedicated budget above and beyond those extras that we talk about. The premium costs of going to electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, or different systems are above and beyond the annual budget that we have allocated, which council has authorized and endorsed. And I think that that's a huge piece of how we get moving forward at a faster pace. Next slide, please, which I think I'm all done. So thank you very much and looking forward to the next part.
Off mute there. Thank you so much, Chris. That was great.
Mutes me automatically. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Chris, Annette, great overview, great progress, great things done. Can we go to the next slide, please? So now I want to talk a little bit about how these things come to be, that other municipalities could look at and pick maybe some nuggets up. And we structure this around, you got to start with a vision, and you both mentioned that you've got a policy and governance gets around to decision making and change management, which is tough. And then the demon at the end is always, where does the money come from? So got those three pieces. I want to start with you, Annette, if I may, and with the whole vision piece. You mentioned council endorsement of the work that you're doing. What does that look like? How do you actually submit your plans to council? What do they review? What do they look at? And what kind of, what kind of endorsement encouragement do you get?
Thank you very much. So, yeah, council's a funny beast, and they are taking their direction from, of course, the public. They've got their report card coming up next year in the election. And really, that's where we sort of depend on Enerlife or other consultants to bring forward how we can save efficiencies, what the benefits will be. I think we have one member of council right now who is very into climate change, and the others maybe less so. So when we're talking about our vision and we're talking about bringing positive impacts to the environment, again, we're looking, like you said, coming down to how is this going to impact the budget, and really that has to do with how they're going to sell it to their constituents. And so that makes it easier for us if it's not only helping the environment, but it's also helping our budget or other things like the EV chargers and the rideshare program. I mean, there's a need in the community for transit. It also happens to help the environment, so that's great. And the EV chargers get us on all kinds of apps, so people might stop in at our town and spend some money on economic development as they're here charging their vehicles. Also helpful. So I think the most important thing is that council's not just looking at one thing, but if you can tie in your initiatives for climate change to other initiatives that council also supports, if it's supporting two different initiatives in your strategic plan or your asset management plan or anything like that, council's gonna go, wow, we're ticking off two boxes in one. So if you can find two birds with one stone, to me, that's where I like to focus on with council.
Sounds like you got a champion on council, and to what
Yes.
degree is progress dependent on individual councillor that gets it?
I think it's good to have someone that has some knowledge of it, has their house is off the grid. They also have a production company for plays that's off the grid productions. So they definitely are a champion and a supporter. So the good thing is, if I'm bringing information forward, as I said, I'm using other experts. I'm not just relying on myself to bring it forward, but it's nice to have somebody else there who's like, yes, this is something I've heard of before. This is something I've investigated, or something that they know about, so that the rest of council it's just a comfort level, right? That somebody else is also on board with it.
Chris, same question to you. You've done some pretty innovative things. I'm guessing some of them had significant costs attached to them. How do you get that to council? How do you get it through council? What kind of presentations do you make to them? What does that council interface look like?
Well, I think it's a lot like Annette. We have some that are very invested and we have some that are less. And it's how do you sell it as an overall goal and objective? I'll start with this. We're very lucky that we have multiple members of council who are behind climate change. And I even have the benefit of one member of council currently who started working as an employee of the town as our environmental stewardship coordinator. So she worked for me 10 years ago and is now a member of council. Obviously, she's become an advocate, but our community is also a huge advocate, which is helpful because they come and they advocate to council as well, right? King Township is a very natural environment. We have 3 small villages, but a lot of our area is Greenbelt and Oak Ridge Moraine. And that brings people who are environmentally conscious, and they come and they assist with that advocacy to council. And it's not just advocacy to council, because funding being the largest issue, we also have to advocate to our provincial and our federal representatives. They were a big part of Zencor for us as well, right? That was a $38 million investment from the province and the federal government to make that building what it could have been to where it ended up. So advocacy is, and partnerships wherever possible, is how you get forward, especially through council, because not just getting them to support it, but if you show there's somebody else who's invested in it, that will help them get invested too.
That's very helpful. You both have set big goals, and big goals is the nature of climate action. Big goals require big changes in the way things are done. What kind of resistance or acceptance, Annette, have you seen from within the municipality around the changes that are required and how you run the facilities and how you make decisions and all of that? How well has that worked within the organization?
So I think we've had, I'm not quite as far along as Chris has, so I can appreciate that a lot. What I have to give is sort of in the planning stage, getting buy-in, and we're really just implementing these projects this year and over the next couple of years. So I appreciate that other people have had successes. And at the end of the day, we have had pushback. I think people are always hesitant with change, with new technologies. But my hope is that as we bring more of these things forward and people get to try them out, then they can see that there are a lot of positive things happening, and we can sort of take these small steps towards our larger goal. And I think that is really, when I'm talking about our big goals, I would, like I said, I would have loved to have gotten funding for our curling club to have it be a net zero, but we're going to work through the arena and through our other projects, and that one is still going to be there. And hopefully, as people see that, or as people try out the EV, they're going to go, oh, you know what, this is, all the bad things I've heard about electric vehicles are not coming to fruition. This is actually okay, and maybe that'll encourage them to make more of an impact too.
And Chris, picking up on that idea, you've done some pretty big projects, and some of them look like they had risk attached to them. And I'll be very happy if you tell me it was all just plain sailing, nothing, what could possibly go wrong, right? How do those decisions get made internally? Have you set up any committee structures? Are there cross-departmental things where people are talking to each other? And when things do go wrong, how has King Township worked that out?
Good question. Before I go there, though, I just wanted to comment on Annette's answer, because I think it's so vital to everything, and she identified it in keys to success, is that getting that staff buy-in is the hardest part. Sometimes it's harder than the council or anywhere else to change the way they want to operate, because a lot of our staff have been here forever. but it sounds like you're doing a great job already, and engaging them constantly as you go through these processes. One of the ways to answer your next part of the question, Ian, is engage the staff along the way, so that we have less hurdles as we go along. One strategy that we've encompassed is when we're going through these major projects, a member of council or the mayor is actually part of the team that sits on the steering committee as we go through all of the designs, all of the buildings. So at the end, they end up being the champion for us when we go to council. It helps to avoid that later shock and awe, so to speak, when it comes up that, we might need more money or we have to change a technology. It's helpful that we already have members who are willing to go there, but having them right in there and having their fingerprint on it changes the way they communicate with their members of council when we get there and ask for something else.
And again, can you think of an example of something that didn't work out the way it was planned, and how you stick handle that through the staff, through the politicians, through all the stakeholders involved?
Yeah, I'll say, I talked about an initiative earlier where we're still trying to figure out things like our EV network and how we thought if we put more out there, it'd be better. If we had more stations where people could charge, it would be better. And it's turned out that was probably the wrong way to go. We should have went with a higher level of charger than a lower level, so that people could charge rapidly. And it's something where you take the feedback and you work with your elected officials. Most of the time, they're helping to bring it to you. And then try to match it with whatever funding you can find out in the grant area, because that's what's going to be our primary driver right now. Yes, we have a dedicated fund, and helps us to match grant opportunities. But to be honest, in my community, it's the community driving these requests. So it's easier to get that buy-in from council and policymakers when it's the community asking for it, because that's who we're to serve.
Absolutely. So outreach to the community is an interesting part to that. How do you, it's leadership by example, right? Annette, have you had success in communicating what you're doing to the community and having them write back to the mayor saying that's exactly what we want to happen? And could you pick up on this whole staff buy-in? The idea is obviously essential, but what exactly does that look like? Were you able to establish committees? Were the staff training sessions? Is there a newsletter? Like, what does that engagement process look like with the community and with your own employees?
So a couple of different things. One thing I wanted to touch on too is our EV chargers with, like I said, it's a collaborative project with our two neighboring municipalities. So I was the one pushing for the level 3 chargers and saying, let's get less and let's go with the I don't mean the newest technology, but the best they've got out there right now. I said, I feel like that's what we need to do. One of my partners did not go that way and decided they wanted to instead to spend the same amount of money and get more level 2s. And the other partner did agree with me, and we went with level 3. So I appreciate hearing that, because that is what I heard from the community and from people who have electric vehicles. So I did follow it there. We also have a community development group that is business owners and stuff through the village. We share a village center with another municipality, which is very odd. So we have people from both of those municipalities who participate in that. And they really were the driving force for this. We also have another project. I didn't mention it, but we're putting in streetlights on Water Street, and we're putting in solar streetlights. And so we had a request for streetlights, and we kind of looked. Anyway, the community came together, and a bunch of the businesses, and anyway, we got them to sponsor these lights. They're about $300 a piece installed, or 3,000, and we got 40 of them. So now we've got more than enough to do Water Street, and we're going to go over to McCrae Park and do a few. So I really think that if the community wants these things, the businesses wants these things, you're going to have some negative feedback. That's just going to happen. Not everybody's going to understand, but you really, you take what those people have to say. And that's really the committee. So we didn't really create a committee, but the Eganville and Area Community Development Group, which meets once a month in our council chambers, like local businesses, the mayor attends, and we have one staff person here, our community development officer, that attends it. And so really we took that information from our businesses, from our people, and said, this is what you want. Okay, where? And then we went to go find it. And for staff, I think that staff is always looking for ways to improve. It wasn't too difficult in this instance because really staff was looking for, we have to replace these parts of our ice plant anyway. This funding came along for, you know, a plan to find efficiencies that also then got attached to funding, and it's going to replace those parts with many other initiatives. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a hard sell because that's the discussion we had was, okay, you're going to get these parts replaced that need to be replaced, but you're also going to get all these things which are going to you know, be good for the environment and good for the budget. So that was not too difficult.
That's good to hear. Catherine, I see on the Q&A we got 3, and the chat we've only got 1, so this is the best audience ever. Any questions that we need to pick up in the conversation, or are they better dealt with afterwards?
I think we could take a chance to deal with them here. There was a question, it's not addressed to anyone in particular, but how, or do you have, and how did you create a dedicated budget for climate action? Chris or Annette, you can take that one, or maybe both of you could. Do you have, and how did you create?
Yeah, I can jump in, and we do have one. I would say that leverage was the greatest opportunity I had when council decided to declare a council or climate emergency in 2019. It was easy for us to then say, well, if we're going to do that, you're going to have to have a dedicated capital budget for those types of initiatives. So, you know, when you see an opportunity, you take it and you go with it. I think our biggest challenge now is trying to increase it year over year when you have all of the other pressures associated with asset management or just inflationary pressures right now.
For us, when we redid our asset management plan in 2021, we had a discussion about all of our buildings and our facilities, because really, you know, we were, you know, the building maintenance budget was just, there was just, well, what did we spend last year? Well, so I got a commitment from council for each one of our facilities. We have $10,000, and our department heads really, you know, it's up to them, and sort of the discussions that I've had with them is, okay, so we have this $10,000 to invest in our facilities every year, regardless of what you need. So I want you to invest it in your facilities. If that means that we're putting in insulation in a roof to kind of deal with heat loss, if that means we're replacing lighting, if that means we're replacing windows, whatever is going to give us some energy efficiencies, I want to see you spend that year over year. So that's really been a push to because, and you know, it's not too hard, because I tell them, if you don't spend this money, council's going to take it away. And and if they take it away, then you know, don't you want your facilities to be better every single year? So that was not too hard to sell, but that's what we went with, and our facilities need to be maintained. I mean, that was clear in our asset management with our condition assessment. You know, our index was going down. I said, we need to start investing in these facilities. I'm not talking big dollars. $10,000 a year is not big dollars for a facility, but we need to commit to it. So trying to, again, align that with 2 birds, 1 stone, align that with your energy goals.
Catherine, next.
Thank you both. Question for Chris. Congratulations on the Zancor Center project. It's an impressive community asset. Can you share any early feedback on initial challenges or successes in the facility's operations? i.e., has it met your facility team's expectations and service levels for the included amenities?
You know, it's a bit of a loaded question, because whenever you open a new facility, you're going to be dealing with deficiencies and operational challenges that are associated with it. And when you open a building of the size and complexity of Zancor, we've been dealing with more than, I think, our fair share in some cases, and that's been coupled by community expectations and challenges on the other side. So we are still evaluating the operational efficiency of the building, and I know that we still need to make modifications as we go forward. I think the benefit here is that we have a team that is greatly committed to making those changes and trying to figure out how we can be better as we go into the second year of operations. Right now, we're not even through year 1, so we've had a lot of systems up and a lot of systems down, which has pulled on other ones to work harder, which isn't really giving us a true reflection yet of what it could look like when we get there.
And let's take the third one, Catherine. This is great.
The funding grant one or the expansion of the dedicated budgets?
You pick.
Okay. Chris, you mentioned allocated dedicated budgets as one of the keys to success. Is this to implement your planned projects, such as corporate energy plan projects? Do you have the budget approved beforehand for the entire project or on a case-by-case basis?
So
Makes sense.
from a corporate energy plan project, a lot of it relates back to our asset management. And like Annette said, whenever we are going into a building to do something, we try to increase that part of the annual budget separate from our climate dedicated budget. So our climate dedicated budget is for projects that might come up as we go along, or some that we have planned. It's really not a fully allocated budget because every year a grant will come up as well, and you have to find money to help offset the other side of that grant, whether it's the EV chargers, our bird strike deterrent projects that we're working on, tree planting, etc. So it's part A and part B. We use it from a flexibility perspective where we don't have a dedicated project, but we are also building into the asset management and annual capital budget the premiums associated with higher cost technologies.
Okay, I think I'm conscious of the time and that we're just about to start biting into the second part of the forum.
Yep.
So
There's
at
a
this
couple
point,
more. There's a couple more questions, but we can respond to those in the document that we release after the event.
let's do exactly that. So, Chris, Annette, thank you so much, not just for taking the time today and in a couple of areas being remarkably candid. It's easy to talk about what goes right. It's harder to talk about what we struggle with, but it's what we struggle with that people can really learn from. So thank you for your candor. Thanks for the time today. Thanks for the time in the prep meeting earlier. Again, this is what makes these forums so meaningful, is the fact we got real people in the real world making things happen and being willing to share their story. So thank you for doing this, and virtual applause in the background, I'm sure you can hear. And Catherine, let's move on to the second part of the program.
Will do. Thank you so much, Annette and Chris. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit now. So as we all know, as we've all learned, these low carbon projects can be expensive and often with high upfront costs, and municipalities are challenged with how to pay for them. So recognizing this, we'll be exploring some alternative funding approaches to getting low carbon projects implemented. So each of our panelists will have a few minutes to explain what they offer, how this can be of benefit to municipalities, and then we'll really have another conversation style question and answer session, really focused on some of the practical elements of this, such as the procurement and the measurement and verification. So I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all of our presenters and panelists today. We have Tim Weber, co-founder and CEO from Diverso Energy. We have Marian Siekierski, General Manager from the Ottawa Renewable Energy Cooperative. We have Ashley Jones, Director of Business Development from Sofiac. We have Mario Giambardino, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, Mario.
Yes.
Chief Financial Officer, Recreation Association of the Public Service of Canada, or the RA Centre. And the session will be moderated by Amandeep Diol, Vice President of the Climate Challenge Network. So I would like to now we'll start with Tim from Diverso Energy.
Great, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining and for inviting us to join this panel and this forum. This is really, really interesting, really exciting. So 5 minutes, a short period of time, so I'll be concise. So a little bit about Diverso Energy. Go to the next slide. Just be quick. I'm one of 3 partners, started the business 11 years ago. I've been in the industry for 21 years. And we recognize that as significant as geothermal is, especially, and in 2014, there's less talk around decarbonization, electrification, energy transition. Those weren't words you were really hearing. However, there was an interest in geothermal, and the biggest challenge was the complexity. It's expensive, it's complicated, designing it's complicated, but I think what people realize is it's a very unique technology. It's not a piece of equipment. So what made it complicated also made it special. It's not a chiller. It's not a high efficiency boiler. It's actually energy infrastructure, and it's on site, on demand, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't rely on sun, wind. It's 365 days a year. So what makes it unique also makes it a challenge. It's a bit of a living, breathing entity. It's infrastructure, not equipment. So the core of our business, next slide, is really how do we take this, incredibly important and significant technology and simplify it. No different than, an iPhone is incredibly complicated, but when for an owner, it's actually quite simple. 5-year-olds use it, and we're trying to do the same thing with geothermal. Take some of that mystery out of it, make it less of a black box technology, and a lot of that comes down to our experience and also some of our approach to the business model and the technology. We're trying to streamline it, make it less complicated for engineers, construction managers, building owners. Next slide. And part of that is removing, you know, I think there's a lot of misconceptions associated with geothermal, and one is, geothermal equals heat pumps. And we've got projects that are water source VRF. We've got, of course, distributed heat pumps. That's the most typical application, but there's 2-pipe fan coils, 4-pipe fan coils, heat recovery chillers used in commercial buildings with VAV systems, dedicated outdoor air systems. So pretty much any system. Even we've got projects I've done in my previous life with packaged rooftop units, retrofitting existing buildings that have rooftops. There's geothermal packaged rooftop units. So other than PTEC units, through the wall air, air source heat pumps, geothermal can be an add-on to just about any type of hydronic or water-based heating and cooling system. Next slide. So this is kind of a new space for us. We're now doing geothermal in low-rise communities. We recently launched a partnership with Mattamy Homes at JV. So we're building zero gas communities with Mattamy. And that's kind of a combination of streamlining that, getting that technology down to that price point where it doesn't impact the purchase price of the home, utilizing our utility model and scale. And, it's to me, this is interesting because it's the first time geothermal has a tangible impact on the end user. No outside air conditioner, no CO2 detector, no venting, more space, less noise, better product. So this is kind of something new that we're doing within Ontario. Next slide. The other, I think, misconception is geothermal requires space, and a lot of our projects, for new construction anyway, and candidly speaking, most of what we've done to date is in the multi-residential sector. However, the municipalities, colleges, universities is a new sector that we're now targeting and looking at actively. But the geothermal system goes underneath the building. It's pre-drilled. It doesn't impact the schedule. It doesn't require space. And this is something we've been doing for well over a decade. And this is part of simplifying geothermal. We don't want it to be a complicated part of construction. Now, for the developer or the construction manager doing this on their own, it would be incredibly complicated, but so is anything if it's not your core business. And that's really the point of, what we're doing. This is our core business, and, our partners can kind of lean on us to just take care of all aspects of the geothermal design and installation. Next slide. This is what it looks like in the basement. So basically, it's just a bunch of, geothermal is not sexy, just being candid. That's the whole point. It's pretty simple. It's pipes buried in the ground. What you see in the underground parking or in the building is just this manifold and some circulating pumps. So this is basically replacing a cooling tower on the roof and a gas boiler. And that's the thing with geothermal. There's really nothing to see, and that's the point. It's most of the infrastructure is buried underneath the building or in the ground. And then once you're in the building, it actually, instead of adding complexity to the building mechanical, it actually does the opposite. It makes it simpler, less moving parts, less equipment to break down, and the geothermal system itself will outlast the outlast the building itself. Next slide. And this is really kind of a game changer for us. When we started the business, this is really what it was about, is removing that upfront cost. And it's not just removing the cost. I heard a lot of conversations in the last, a few presentations about budget. Geothermal is value engineered out. And with our model, quite often it's value engineered in because we pay for the geothermal, which means there could be cost savings on other items. You no longer need a cooling tower, you no longer need a boiler. So utilizing our utility model, the net mechanical cost is often reduced rather than increasing. But it's not just about reducing the cost. A lot of our partners are, REITs, institutional clients. What they want to do is offset the risk. For them, it's risk mitigation because we own the system, just like any other utility, Enbridge, Toronto Hydro. We're also taking on operational responsibility, guaranteeing the performance. So it's kind of shifting the risk of owning geothermal, the risk associated with it, and the responsibility to the partner who A, has paid for it, and B, has the experience and qualifications to manage it. And I think that's the piece that's missed in the past. It's not just financial. Like when you hear, most schools that have put in geothermal have decommissioned them, and a lot of that, it's not the technology, it was the procurement. It was installed improperly, integrated improperly, it wasn't managed, nobody was monitoring it, and 10, 15 years later, they weren't working, and those buildings were retrofitted back, unfortunately, back to natural gas. Next slide. And this is, business model that's been around for a while. 2.5 years ago, we were acquired by a large infrastructure fund out of Europe, and that was really, a significant shift for us. So now we are fully vertically integrated, and it's kind of, I think it brings that, you know, corporate discipline that the industry really needed, not just capital, but it's now, we're on the stage, we're a real company backed by a real company. We're bringing, we've got over a dozen drill rigs. We're hiring drillers out of Alberta, bringing them from the oil sands into Ontario. So there's that retooling of existing oil and gas trades, not even retooling, it's reallocation of those trades. So it's an exciting time. I feel like the industry after 20 years is finally hitting this kind of point of being a well-recognized grown-up industry, no longer a mom and pop fragmented industry that it's been for many years. Next slide. Retrofits. So got about a minute left, and this is, as much as it's more challenging than new construction. At the same time, there's huge opportunities, and I can't get into all the details, but there's really a couple things to look for. Is there land? Can't drill under the building. What's the existing mechanical system? How old is that mechanical system? It needs to be near end of life. It's hard to make the economics work when you're replacing 10-year-old equipment, but if equipment's near end of life, boiler, cooling tower, you can very quickly make an economic case for retrofitting to geothermal, especially if that infrastructure cost is turned into a long-term OPEX rather than a CAPEX. Next slide. Yeah, some of our partners. So Sofiac, who's on the panel today. Ashley, we provide one portion of the overall retrofit, and that's what's different with retrofit is you kind of need a full turnkey package, and we only do geothermal. So it's important for us to collaborate with others who are doing, the chiller upgrade and, windows insulation or mechanical upgrades. Our focus is strictly geothermal. So, I feel like we kind of, without that strategic partnership, we really only offer half of that $100 bill. So that's really important for us. And it also allows us to make sure that the geothermal is integrated with the right technologies, the right solutions. So, it has to be looked at holistically. You can't design geothermal in isolation. Next slide. I think we can move past this. I don't want to take up too much more time. So couple sample projects. We have in-house design team, and we've been doing municipal buildings for years, not with our utility model. Offering our utility model for the public sector is a new offering, but we've been working on these projects for 10 to 15 years through our design team, which is in-house at Diverso. So I'll stop there.
That's great. Thanks so much, Tim.
That was harder than I thought. I thought
5 minutes is
no problem.
Good job. 5 minutes is not a lot of time to explain all of that. So thank you very much. Of course, we'll be sharing the slides after if people want to dig in a little more. But I think the real value is going to come into the conversation when we can, talk with Amandeep and others and really get to the nitty gritty of some of these things. So thank you very much. And I will now turn it over to Marion to talk about their model.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Amandeep, for hosting the forum. It's a great opportunity, and I'm happy to be part of the panel and also to be discussing with the audience later with Tim and Ashley as well. So let me dive right in. I have to stick to the 5 minutes. So what I would like you to walk away with at the end of the 5 minutes is the idea that you can benefit from solar energy at no upfront cost. You can reduce your electricity budget and make it predictable for the next 20, 30 years. And all of that with no operational burden and no capital expenditure. So the approach that I'd like to introduce is SaaS, or Solar as a Service. So we've heard all about the challenges that municipalities face. You are faced with rising electricity costs. The rise is unpredictable. Some of you have set net zero targets, and you're wondering how to implement them, how to achieve them. Capital budgets are likely stretched already with your core priorities, and likely there's limited in-house experience to build and operate renewable energy assets, similar to also what Tim was explaining just now. These are complex systems, in particular in Tim's case, and there is limited local expertise. And maybe you also have resilience issues. Maybe you have issues with power supply. Maybe you've had outages. Maybe you're concerned about extreme weather events and what impact that will have on your municipality. Next slide, please. So what is solar as a service? The idea basically means that a third party designs, installs, owns, and operates a solar PV system. It can also be a wind turbine, but right now we're somewhat limited in the regulatory framework. And the municipality buys the electricity, similar to how you get your electricity from your utility, but in this case, you buy the electricity from your solar as a service provider. That means there's no upfront capital cost to you because the capital is raised by the provider. In this case, obviously, I'm talking for OREC, so that would be OREC, a for-profit renewable energy cooperative. It's hands of operations. So OREC manages everything from start to finish, the design, obviously in cooperation with our partners, the operation, the maintenance, the insurance, everything. So there's no operational burden on our partner institutions. And all you pay for is essentially an all-inclusive kilowatt-hour rate. And the way we approach our agreements is that we try to be at par with your current rate or slightly below your current kilowatt-hour rates from your utility. And we escalate at what we expect to be a much lower rate across an agreement of 20, 25, 30 years, depending on the preference of the partner. Obviously, the municipality benefits from the immediate GHG reductions, and probably you're all aware that the emissions factor of the Ontario grid is rising. It's actually, in 2024, it was as high as 2012 when coal was still in use. So it really has that immediate GHG reduction benefit. As we are a for-profit cooperative, an additional benefit with our model, which I think can be useful for municipalities, it is for some of our other partners, is that you have a community benefit as well. So your community can invest in these projects and earn a modest return on them. Next slide. So we as a cooperative have almost 1,200 members, and we raise capital from our members or member investors. So that's how we can fund the entire solar PV system without burdening your balance sheet. Next slide. We then design and build the project, provide monitoring and maintenance, and the municipality or our partners otherwise, such as schools and crown corporations, for example, benefit from clean energy without any hassle. So our kilowatt hour rate is really all inclusive. There isn't any additional fee for the monitoring and maintenance. It's all just one rate, and you pay it as you would pay your utility as well. And the rates are agreed like from day one of the power purchase agreement. So it makes your electricity budget really predictable, you know, from day one until, you know, the last day of the agreement, exactly what your electricity budget will be like. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think one additional point in addition to the predictability and stability I mentioned is that besides solar PV systems, we're also flexible in integrating other opportunities. So, for example, battery storage systems. If resiliency is is a challenge that you're dealing with or that you're concerned about, that's something that can be integrated in a project as well. Next slide. And coming back to the cooperative aspect of OREC, Ottawa Renewable Energy Cooperative, is that we invite the local community, the local population to invest in these projects. So that helps municipalities as well to some extent, I guess, to bring the community along on the path to net zero, right? By their population investing in these projects. So preference shares that we sell are sold for as little as $500, and investors earn an annual dividend. It allows, you know, that increased engagement by the community, and it helps demonstrate your municipality's leadership in the net zero transition. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here we have a few examples of our projects. This is a high school in Ottawa that we've built a project on. It is a net metering project, so the current type of project that is allowed under the regulations. We are hoping, as the regulatory framework evolves, that additional opportunities will become available where we can go beyond net metering, which really just looks at one particular building, one particular user, and do things like community solar gardens. I know Nova Scotia, for example, is quite progressive, and there are a lot of new models that are being tried and tested there right now. So I think Ontario eventually, over the next few years, will go that way as well. Next slide, please. And this is a project that we've built on the Museum of Science and Technology in Ottawa. We're just extending that project as well, and it will be, as we think, one of the biggest solar projects in all of Eastern Ontario. So that's a particularly exciting site for us right now. Next slide, please. That is one of the projects, an energy efficiency project that was set up by a sister co-op, Co-Energy, where we replaced all the lighting at the RA Center in Ottawa. A shorter project. It just ran for 5 years, and it's completed now. Next slide, please. And again, just a number of different rooftop projects. We also have some ground mount solar tracking projects that were built during the feed-in tariff program era, and also built as net metering projects, which is kind of that model solar as a service that I was talking about. Yeah, so just to wrap it up, I hope I stick to my 5 minutes. The benefits of the solar as a service approach is no upfront cost, no capital burden on the municipality, your all-inclusive kilowatt hour rates, predictability in your electricity budget. And one thing I'd also like to mention is the fact that the deployment is really quick. So in under a year, you can have an operational solar system on your roof and benefit from that. Tim, we had spoken about in the prep session that it's really more becoming about finding the right partner and essentially making sure that your interests are aligned, right? So with this model, it is a long-term engagement where, given that we run those systems, so solar PV systems, obviously we also want to make sure, just like our partners, that they run at peak efficiency, right? So it's that alignment in interest, I think, which is a really winning combination. Yeah, so OREC is a community partner, and we're excited to explore opportunities with municipalities. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marion. Looking forward to the conversation after Ashley presents. I think there's a question for you in the Q&A if you're able to answer that during the presentation or afterwards if
I'll have a look.
giving you any trouble. Thanks so much. Okay, and I would now like to turn it over to Ashley Jones, the Director of Business Development with Sofiac.
Thank you very much for having me. I'll jump right into it in the interest of time. There we go. So we're all here looking for different sustainable projects, but often there's different barriers that are facing it. So we are here talking about the financial, but financial can mean a whole bunch of different things. So one is I don't have enough funding to be able to do this. Sometimes it's I'm looking for just a short-term return on investment. So when you think about sustainability or GHG reduction, you're maybe mandated by council, for instance, to only look for a short-term ROI. But really, it's like what Annette said, you want to look at the aged infrastructure you already need regardless. The other thing is sometimes it can be complex and time-consuming, which time is money when you're looking at doing a whole bunch of different items together. So often that just stops it because it becomes overwhelming. That can also be internal capacity constraints. That's to me to do the bidding process, can do the work, PM it, oversee it. We all understand municipalities are faced with a whole bunch of different challenges, not just climate change resiliency. And then there's also high risk perception. And when I talk about risk perception, I mean, is this project going to help me operate the facility the way I want it to? Is it going to result in the GHG reduction, energy reduction that I initially had hoped for? And not knowing that, sometimes it just stops right the project still. We'll move on to the next one. So that sounded like a lot of bad news there. So what does Sofiac do to be able to help you? So we are a Canadian-based organization, and we're looking at supporting sustainable retrofits across all of Canada. We're looking to reduce energy costs, GHG emissions, as well as operational risks. So we're looking at all these things in tandem, not just one or the other. We are backed by Canada Infrastructure Bank and Natural Resources Canada. And I already told you about the sectors that we're able to support. And I will keep moving on to keep on time. All right, so what we are is we have projects that are self-funded that are paid only through a demonstration of the shared savings. So there's no investment that's needed for the municipality. We can start right with the plans that you have. If you don't have any plans, we can help you move those plans across. So it's completely turnkey. We bring all the funding and all the right people in to be able to help execute it right from design all the way to build over to operate and maintain if that's what makes sense for you. So what we're trying to do is alleviate the risk for technical and financial. We are typically looking for 15-year contractual agreements, which is great for municipalities because you tend to hold on to your facilities for a lot longer. What is unique about us is we're not financing, we're a fund. And so we're structured as non-recourse project investment with no impact on your debt service cover ratio. So quickly, what that means is when you're looking at doing projects, you might have to decide, okay, well, I can only borrow so much because my upper tier only allows this or the province only allows this. So you might decide to put energy project to the side. As we don't hit your debt service cover ratio, we're able to do your energy projects as well as doing your other projects. Well, you can do your other projects, but we won't be hitting your debt service cover ratio. We'll keep moving on. All right, this is going to require a bit of clicking here. Sorry about that, Catherine. So I'm going to give an example because a lot of times it becomes hypothetical when we're talking about this. So let's make this a little bit more tangible. So let's say you had a facility or a group of your facilities or all your facilities, and let's say the energy use, so that's what you're paying your gas, your hydro, your water. Let's say it's about $2 million a year in your annual energy cost. We've acknowledged from even talking to Annette and hearing Chris talk that they're looking at things like lowering their GHG emission, lowering their utility cost. One more click there, Catherine. and you normally want to upgrade your infrastructure. So you're normally looking at all these things, and how do you combine these things together? So let's say you go do an audit and it costs you, and we'll click here, $4 million in capital. So how do we go funding it? We can click again, because we all know funding a project, $4 million isn't $4 million, because how else could we invest it? Where are we going to find that funding from? So what Sofiac likes to do, if we click again, is we want to lower your energy and GHG by a minimum of 30%. So keep in mind, I talked about looking at this all holistically together. We're not just looking at just lowering your GHG, we're looking for that energy efficiency as well in tandem. So if we are indeed able to do this, for instance, in this $4 million capital project, you would be saving $600,000. We'll click there. And how do we get paid back? So what we would do is we would measure those savings, and if indeed they are 600,000, we work on a shared saving ratio. So anywhere from 80 to 95%, sometimes 100% if it makes sense, of the savings, depending on how you want it structured. But if you do this on an 85%, we'll click here, and we can just click again. So 85% of the project, those savings would go back to fund the project for Sofiac, while the municipality would remain 15% positive cash flow. So keep in mind, you were always budgeting $2 million for your facility. We're now going to go do a really cool project that's going to achieve lower GHG, lower your utility, upgrade the infrastructure you need to get done. And now you're going to be paying 1.4 million, and you're going to be paying 510 back to Sofiac, remaining cash flow positive. So really the question here is, if we're able to fund you these savings, do you want to be paying that $600,000 to your hydro, gas, water, or do you want to be paying it to us and making sure that you're getting your infrastructure upgraded and hitting those goals that you want? So we'll go to the next slide. And I am going to let Mario talk because he is the CFO for the RA Center. And we have him here.
Yes. Hello.
Welcome,
on?
Mario.
Here I am.
Ashley.
Okay. All
There you
right.
are.
Thank you, Ashley, and Marion is correct. We started with our lights many years ago. COVID kind of almost wiped us out. We were faced with an immediate capital requirement to upgrade our heat because the federal government was disconnecting our piped-in hot water. And we were lucky enough to get a grant, but the grant objective was GHG reduction. So we had to combine the two, and Sofiac, in partnership with Siemens, took over the project. And the grant gave us about half of what we needed, and Sofiac provided the upfront for the other half. It basically took away all the technical and financial risk for us. We are a standalone non-profit organization, despite our grandiose name. We're standalone, and we have to use revenue from our programming to be able to pay the bills. And so this one was perfect because it got us our new heating distribution system. It lowered our energy costs, and nothing up front. So that's our story here.
Great. So I'll just finish off with the last slide, but really we talked about the different challenges that organizations like the RA Center and other municipalities may have here. So the way Sofiac's looking to solve this is, when you don't have the lack of adequate funding, you don't have the adequate funding, we're able to invest completely turnkey, providing you with positive cash flow right from the start, deliver end-to-end experience because we bring in the right expertise. We're not here selling a specific type of technology. It depends on what your outcomes that you're looking for and where you're gapping and how we can help reach those depending on your facility. And really, like Mario said, it's eliminating that project risk. And that's the end for me.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That was a lot of information in a very short time. So thank you. Kudos to you. And again, I think the real value here is going to come out in these conversations. So now looking forward to the panel discussion. There's Amandeep. Welcome, Amandeep.
Thanks. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, everyone, for joining this afternoon, for your time. Let's bring the panel slide. Yeah, that one. I think let's keep that. I think that's probably better so people can still find. So let me, I guess, I think it was kind of addressed with all of you, but a simple question to all of you, and I think we can start with Ashley, Marian, and Tim, and then Mario, please feel free to jump in. So these are sort of traditionally the typical projects are done in traditional ways where you have a bid and spec, but what we're proposing here is a slightly different for building operators and municipalities and owners to sort of pick on some of these projects. Now, what are some of the risks and opportunities that you see with this approach, and what would you suggest the municipality owners to identify or kind of put that in there so they can mitigate those risks? So with each of your approach, what are some of the risks that you see are there, and how could they mitigate, or maybe use an example from your previous projects where you were able to mitigate those risks for the clients?
I can take a stab at that. So some of the risks that people see when you're picking a partner is, well, I'm going to partner with them, and then they're going to completely gouge me. And often it's actually different from that, because the partner is normally looking for the different outcomes, and you're building it along the way with the municipality. So in terms of answering quickly, in terms of how you can mitigate that, is making sure that you have different out clauses. So when you're looking at design build or turnkey solutions, there's normally pathways that you can exit if you feel you need to. And then the other thing I would say, make sure you're validating upfront. That partnership helps, looking at different references, and ensuring that accountability for that partner, you've seen it, through other examples.
Yeah, I think maybe
Marianne?
if you don't mind me adding to that. So I agree with what Ashley said. I think just in practical terms as well, a challenge I see is how do municipalities procure these systems, right? There are the procurement rules are somewhat rigid, and they might not be amenable to these new approaches necessarily. So I think that's definitely one challenge. One that we would address by, for example, offering an open book policy, so where we allow our partners to just have complete transparency on the project finances.
Tim?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. One, it's not changing necessarily how municipalities procure, but maybe looking at different categories. How you procure a commodity should look very different than how you find a partner with some, a major piece of technology. Just using geothermal as an example, as I mentioned earlier, it's incredibly complex, it's nuanced, and the end result is not guaranteed. It's not something you buy off the shelf that has specifications. So I think too often I see groups choosing the technology first and then finding the partner who, based on price or whatever that metric may be. I think it should be the other way around. The qualification process is about finding the right partner with an idea on a solution and a technology. And then once you have chosen that partner, collectively, the teams at the table will choose the right technology and the right solution. And I think that doesn't mean that you need a sole source. There can still be a competitive process. I'm not suggesting you move away from that. I don't think that's practical. However, that process, I think, needs to look very different, because right now, far too often, we just avoid anything that's bid spec, because we'll look at the tender package and say, well, that's that geothermal system is 50 to 100% more expensive than it needs to be. And if we could have been brought in sooner, we could have changed that. So.
Thanks, Tim. And Maria, you lived through the example and sort of going through the final stage of the project close. You've been presented the ideas around initially, okay, this is kind of the project. So how did you evaluate sort of the risk for this project, and what are some of the boundaries that helped you to sort of draw conclusions around, okay, if this is presented to us in this way, then we feel comfortable about going into this arrangement?
Amandeep, you're directing that towards me, eh?
Yes.
Yeah. So we were in a situational, I wish we were a little more proactive. And as I mentioned when I was talking, there was a couple of events that occurred to us that we had to react to. I think we evaluated the landscape. And if I recall correctly, we started with Siemens. as an engineering, more of a feasibility study, and what do we do with the situation we were in. And then Sofiac came in because the Siemens introduced, they saw that we would have some difficulty in getting some financing that would match the project. In terms of our procurement process, I think it wasn't RFPs and RFQs. What we did was sort of value engineering. We would get third-party opinions if needed. And I think what we appreciated with Sofiac and Siemens was their transparency. And not only that, they involved some vendors that we had worked with before. So that transparency, the flexibility allowed us to really evaluate both the financial risk and the technological risk. So we were quite pleased in the way we selected Sofiac Siemens team. I don't know if that answers all your question, Amandeep, but
no, thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
No, it did
yeah,
answer
we're
it.
just not, and I just, for everybody else, we're just not large enough to conduct. We're only about 30 full-time people here. We look large. We are a big facility, but we just didn't have the funds to run a full RFP. So we had to do it quite strategically.
Thanks, Mary. And again, questions to all three of you, and you can pick it in any order. So the different approaches, the municipalities have been now approached from every angle. Like there's typical angles around the typical projects around the studies are done, and then that follows a construction, and then that follows a savings period. But then there's other sort of opportunities through different sort of aspects of these projects where a team has been proposed and they do that work. At what stage of these projects and municipalities are looking, they should start considering these opportunities, and how do they sort of work with you guys? Is that something individually? Like what's like if there's a municipality currently listening to you and they're looking at these projects, what is their next step to kind of look into this? Because Marianne, you have a specific sort of offering. Ashley, you have an offering which combines kind of everything, and then Tim, you have to be part of a kind of a group that delivers this, because geothermal alone would most cases wouldn't be a part of the solution, right? So you're kind of combining it with other solutions. So what would your recommendations to the municipalities when they're in that stage? Like how do they approach you, and what does that sort of solution look like for them?
I would simply just extend an invitation to get in touch. It does depend a little bit on the specific cases, right? How we have to match the load with the generation and so on. So we would have to look at individual locations and see what works. There's no hard and fast rule as to when exactly it's the right time to connect, I would say.
Yeah, I think we're having some conversations currently with different municipalities. And fortunately, we have a very robust in-house engineering team. It's a separate company, part of the Diverso, larger company, but it operates as a standalone engineering firm. So that gives us that flexibility. They can engage our engineering team who, they all they do is geothermal, and they're very good at this, and they kind of look at it through the lens of the utility model and reducing costs and efficiency. So we're obviously philosophically aligned now with those preliminary feasibility studies, and it allows them to engage us through the engineering steps to determine, does geothermal make sense, and is it part of the overall retrofit solution, and trying to meet those is it the best technology to meet those carbon and energy targets? So that would be step one. And then step two is, I think, working with the finance team. Is our structure and business model align? Is it truly considered off balance sheet, which, Ashley brought that up, and that's incredibly important. This can't be considered, a liability. It can't be considered debt. It can't impact their ability to borrow other money. And, that's a priority for us. And we structured the business to do exactly that. And that needs to be verified. And then the third step is what are the other technologies? And that's, you know, working hand in hand with folks like Ashley now to provide this turnkey solution. But that all sounds good. How do you do all that without everyone involved blowing their brains out, right? Like how much brain damage and cost and time goes into that? And I think what the engineering piece does up front is allows you to kind of hone in on does this make sense and get to that solution as quickly and cost effectively as possible. So at least we know this is directionally accurate, it's moving in the right direction and it has legs. Then you can have much more detailed conversations later. And I find too often, you know, there's way too many detailed conversations happening when nobody's really determined does this technology actually make sense.
I For Sofiac, I think it's a little bit different. So if you're looking to do a project and you're interested in the Sofiac fund and how we're structured, I'd say talk to us right away. Again, we can join in later, like with Mario. It requires a little bit of jumping through hoops, so I'm never going to say no. But I think when you're looking at our model, because we're not looking at selling any one specific technology, we're going to look at what your different outcomes are, where you're gapping, how to be able to reach those objectives. So we're going to work with organizations like Tim's, for instance, and making sure that we're finding those efficiencies first before we're oversizing, for instance, a geothermal system. So we work together to make sure we're not putting in too large of a system, and we're looking at finding those efficiencies all together. And we don't necessarily know what that technology is. What happens when you go and you have these studies done beforehand? Again, we can absolutely look at them, but you end up redoing the work over a little bit more, because often organizations that just do studies don't necessarily look at or have necessarily the accountability all the way through to construction and owning the equipment like Tim's or Marion's or our model.
Okay. Typically, what would your recommendations to the owners to have a skill set they need on whether internally or externally with their trusted partners to have somebody that understand the implications of it, whether that's a financial contract side or whether that implication of design, that how it's going to sort of integrate their existing system, because most of this would require a large scale a change in how the systems were currently designed and they're operated to a transition, which is a low carbon transition. So that needs the addition of additional equipment, which previously, whether on the operations team, they didn't have experience, or even on the financial side, they may not be sort of having the experience. So what sort of expertise they should have on board as a facility owner to get into these kind of contracts, or to even understand the implications or finally go through that, the full cycle of this project?
I think when it comes down to the skill sets, it really depends on, it's not about having it for sure, because there are organizations like Marianne's and Tim's that are going to oversee those systems through the time. So it's understanding where you might be gapping and where you might want those solutions. In terms of bringing to the table to look at a holistic approach, I always say you need at least three different groups. So you want the finance team or financial team. You're definitely going to want facilities, because we're going and we're touching their equipment. For instance, I was listening to Chris talking about realized technology. I had done a project here, for instance, with the city of Brampton. I can see Curtis on here from Brampton. And for instance, they weren't a big fan of the realized technology. He was, but his facility staff wasn't. But the good thing is they talk to each other before they go implementing that technology. And then it's also important to have people like, and I'm going to throw out Curtis's name again from City of Brampton, but having people from the sustainability side. So we want to look at all three of those angles: the financial solution there, the environmental, and then how it's actually affecting their facilities. So you're going to want to look at all of them, but I wouldn't say it's about needing a specific set of skills.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know,
think
like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that absolutely, and I think maybe Tim, you see it differently because your systems are a lot more complex than solar. With solar, it's a pretty straightforward integration, and like Ashley mentioned, it's the operational burden is taken off the shoulders of our partners because we look after that. So there isn't really any particular technical expertise required on the side of our partners in that case.
Yeah, I think it's a great question because that's a bit of a misconception that's out there, is the idea that, while we need to have those resources or those skills in-house, well, no matter what, you're trusting somebody with the skill. Like there's an element of, you're bringing on a new technology like geothermal, at some point there's an element of trust and handing that responsibility over to someone. So it could be an employee, but that employee is nothing more than an employee, right? You can hand it over to an outside contractor, they're just a contractor. An engineer, they're just an engineer. The difference, I think, with the three different business models or what we provide that's unique is accountability. What you've done now is, when we install that geothermal, we're financially motivated because we don't get paid unless the system performs. And we're owned by a 200 billion euro fund. Their reputation and their desire to see a return on that investment is pretty high. So failure is not an option. So we're contractually motivated because we have a contract that clearly identifies, there's an M&V component to this. There's contractual obligations around performance, and those are identified, agreed to, signed off on, and we are obligated to meet those every year for the term of the contract. Say it's 30 years. So there's a financial investment and motivation, there's a contractual motivation, and no one else, you can't do that internally. No employee is going to have that. No contractor is going to provide you that. No outside engineering firm. Everything else is best effort. So that's what I talked about earlier around shifting that, it's risk mitigation, offloading that risk and downloading it to someone who's A, qualified, and B, financially invested. So there's skin in the game now. And that to me is the biggest difference. You don't need to have those resources internally, because how are you going to hire somebody for 30 or 40 years of the life of that piece of equipment? You're always going to be subject to that. No different. You don't have somebody in house who's a natural gas expert, right? You rely on Enbridge for that. So I think these technologies need to be looked at like infrastructure or other utilities, not as assets or commodities.
It comes back to that alignment of interests, right? That I think we spoke in the prep session previously, and it's interesting you bring in that continuity aspect as well, because like you say, if you have someone on staff, well, they might leave in a few years, right? But if you bring in an outside partner, there is that continuity aspect as well.
Mario, did you find that your team, like what type of expertise did you need to bring on board to make it move smoothly?
We didn't have the expertise. There was some knowledge about facility management. Our CEO at the time had run other centers, so there was a broad-based. But I would say what I found very heartening was, in dealing with Sofiac, was if I had a finance question, the same individual could answer the finance question and then answer the technical side and the GHG side. We were fortunate. I think it was Ivan at the time. I don't know if you remember Ivan, but that was a good setup for us, because we just didn't have, we needed the information to come to us for us to evaluate. We didn't even know enough to ask all the right questions. So we were quite fortunate the way with the Sofiac setup.
Catherine, just checking on time. Do we have time for one more question? Just a quick, or are we out of time?
We have a couple more minutes. I can cut my closing remarks to a minute. No one wants to hear me anyway, so keep going.
Thanks. We'll wrap it up in 2 minutes and kick remarks on this last one. So, which I think ties to your previous comments around part of these sort of models are based on a clear M&V plan, the measurement verification plan, so that the partners that are delivering are comfortable with that, and the owner are comfortable seeing that plan, that we have talked about, this is my baseline, these are my adjustments that are allowed, these are adjustments that are not allowed in that model. So based on your experiences, how critical are those plans, and what do you do to set those up from the front? Any other?
Marion, Tim, I'm not quite sure if you guys use M&V on yours.
Yeah, ours is our technology is a little bit different, probably closer to Marion. It's not, we have nothing to do with energy savings. That whatever energy savings are a result of the geothermal belong to the client. For us, it's more about there's an M&V associated with the output of the bore field. So we're monitoring and managing that bore field energy balancing, and there's, you know, peak heating BTUs, peak cooling, aggregate heating, and those numbers are identified. And it's important not only to make sure the client's getting exactly what they're paying for every year, but also it's important for the engineers involved when they're designing complementary equipment, you know, fan coils, chillers, heat pumps, whatever, they need to know what is that output of this thermal battery that's going on the property to make sure they can design a system that aligns properly. So upfront, it's for the engineers, and then long term, it's just making sure that we're held accountable, that there is some accountability there associated with that monthly fee.
I guess it's similar in our case as well. So we monitor our systems 24/7. Of course, that same information is available to our partners if they wish to check in on that. We make sure our systems are available. We have a 99% performance rate, and our technical contractors are on the way as soon as there are any issues, as soon as there's any systems are down. They have a very quick response rate as well. So we can provide all those data points as well to our partners.
And then M&V, I think, is crucial for when looking at the Sofiac program. And just so we're clear, someone was asking about EPC. Sofiac isn't an EPC per se, but when you are looking at EPC or a Sofiac program, I think M&V is very crucial. But I think, again, it goes back to a partnership. It's working with the team to explain those items you were talking about, Amandeep, right? Like what type of normalization, how would we do adjustments? What type of adjustments are acceptable by all parties? So it's really working collaboratively to have this outcome of a project that is, you know, what we're all here for is for sustainable, energy efficient GHG reduction projects.
Thanks, Ashley.
I was just going to
Mary.
add in that for us, being a small team, having sort of that M&V kind of creates a virtual team we can draw upon to kind of run the you know, ensure those savings, because I couldn't even imagine how we would be able to do it without, you know, that virtual team behind us to execute that M&V.
Thanks again. Thanks everybody for your time. I'm going to pass on this to Catherine, and this is just touching the surface on this. I think there's a lot more questions I'm pretty sure everybody has around how these models going to get executed, what are some of the things they should do. So we're going to continue this dialogue in the upcoming sessions and also bring some real life examples and how things are happening in the field actually. So back to you, Catherine.
Yeah. Thanks, Amandeep, and thanks everyone. Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I think we've just hit the tip of the iceberg here, and this will probably be or will be a conversation that continues next year and beyond as folks start working through these projects and processes. Definitely lots to be learned and shared going forward. I think the questions were mostly answered for this session in the Q&A document. If anyone thinks of anything that they want to add in there now, please feel free to do so, and we'll make sure that your questions get answered. But of course, you can reach out to me at any time, and I'll make sure to pass on the questions to the panelists. These are just some reminders of who we are and what we do. So when we send out the deck, it's all there. I think a lot of you know who the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge are already. Here's some of our members. So we really like to recognize the achievements of our members for savings achieved, for progress towards targets. So that recognition piece is huge, and we'll be continuing to profile these achievements and drawing on the successes from our members. Going forward, this is just a brief recap of what we looked at in 2025. All of our recordings are on the Mayor's Megawatt Challenge website. If you'd like to take a look at anything that was done in the past, they're all up there. And we can reach out if you're wanting any information about any of our upcoming projects. In 2026, again, we'll be continuing looking at the practical pathways to net zero. Again, focusing on webinars and technologies supporting this transition, doing profiles, case studies of some of these new builds and retrofits. And I've already got a list going of who I'm going to be contacting. So stay tuned for that. Again, the implementation support, financing, procurement, all of these things we've been talking about today will be continuing conversations. So stay tuned for 2026. And I'd like to thank everyone again, all of our panelists for taking the time to share and join. We really, really appreciate it. And I hope everyone was inspired by today's conversations. And I know I was, and I'm really looking forward to working together and how we can make all of these visions a reality. So thanks again, everyone. Take care. Here's my contact information if anyone needs to reach me or has any questions.